Hey guys, so last week I talked about in the greenhouse I've tried 30 or more recipes from various ways to stimulate plant growth and stimulate the roots of the plants. These two tomato plants both started by seed, started at the same time, same watering schedule, same light amount in the greenhouse, but one has had a very specific regimen of a root stimulator, a very organic root stimulator, something you probably eat for breakfast now and then. So this is a very simple recipe, but I'm going to show you 5 different ways to prepare this, and the main ingredient is going to be oatmeal. It can be quick oats or the type you have to cook, whichever, but just take some ordinary oatmeal. You don't have to go with a name brand. I've got the less generic Walmart brand, not the Quaker oat, so it's really inexpensive to create this recipe, but I'll give you 5 different ways to create it. And as you can see, the growth stimulation has been incredible over the last month. I managed to keep the temperature in the greenhouse above freezing, so we've had no frost inside the greenhouse because some of the heaters I've created or had working in the greenhouse over time. So I was able to manage to start all my seeds and not have to worry about the temperatures. I've got a little alarm inside the greenhouse, so if it does dip below 35, I'll know to come out and add some extra heat, but I didn't have to do that this year. We're getting a very early spring, so let's take a look at these 5 ingredients, but I just want to give you a comparison. Same variety of tomatoes, same exact growth time, but this one has been incredibly stimulated by something as simple as a fermented oatmeal, but I'm going to show you again 5 ways to prepare it. Now recipe number 1 is just a basic fermented oatmeal microbe tea, and you can use any type of oatmeal. This is just the most generic, least expensive I've found. I think the one up from this may be the Quaker oats, but this is just Walmart's brand. So you want to take 1 cup of oatmeal, and you can do the instant or the type you have to cook. Either way is fine. Now next, you're going to do 1 tablespoon of molasses, and the reason we want molasses is there's a lot of minerals in molasses, and the sugars in the molasses is going to react with our yeast, which is the next product. We want 1 tablespoon of dry yeast, and you can use really any type, but I like this particular brand because I can keep it in the fridge. It's a powdered yeast and it's easier to use. And then lastly, we want, if I can reach it over here, we want some rainwater, or we want some type of pure water that does not have chlorine. So you want to remember that if you use chlorinated water, it can kill the microbes in the growth of the yeast and the bacteria that's going to be growing there. So we're going to take a quart jar. I'm going to try to do this without spilling anything. And so I'm going to nearly fill this to the top, and I'll top it off if I need to. So we're about 3/4 of the way up, or a little bit more. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the teaspoon, and my tablespoon is all I have handy right now, so I'll just mix a little bit less than a tablespoon. I think it's 3, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 3 teaspoons to 1 tablespoon. We're going to add that to our mix there. Get that out of the way. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to add our molasses, and we want to do this first. We don't want to add our oatmeal right at this point right here. So we're going to do 1 tablespoon of molasses. Try not to make a huge mess here. And what I would recommend before you add your oats, let these two sit for about 30 minutes and do a very vigorous shaking. And then that way you can mix them 2 together. Remember that you need to make sure, because there's going to be some pressure buildup, make sure you don't tighten down the lid, just set it on top there. Now you can wait a while, anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, but I would recommend adding the oatmeal and then allowing that to take place, that time period, 24 to 48 hours. Remember, just set the lid on there if you're using this type. If you have it in some other type of container like a glass or something like that, just put a clean cloth on top of it, because you want to allow it to breathe, the oxygen to be in there, and allow this process to take place. So it does, like I say, take a little bit of time, but that is what we're going to need to do. So first thing we've done is we've got our oatmeal working with our sugars there. We're going to wait a little bit before we add our oatmeal, and we're going to, like I said earlier, we're going to cover it loosely for 24 to 48 hours. So at the end of this, I'm going to let you in on which one of the 5 recipes that I thought with oatmeal did the best, and which one caused the phenomenal growth. Now I did try all 5 recipes on 10 different plants, and I was able to compare side by side what was happening. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our 1 cup of oatmeal, and we want to make sure it's mixed quite well. Now the 24 to 48 hours begins, And you want to make sure that, I may have not mentioned this, but you want to make sure that your water is a little bit on the warm side. So don't start with cold water. If you had the water sitting outside, take it inside and let it come up to room temperature. 75 to 85 degrees is optimal. So again, we're starting that process with this first jar of the oatmeal fermented microbe tea, and that is number 1. So we're going to move on to the second recipe. Now, one thing before we move on to recipe 2 that I forgot to mention is, if you decide not to do 2 through 5, you just want to try the first one, or you want to try one at a time, you want to do a soil drench around the plant. So you start your seed, and once you have your first set of true leaves, then you can do a soil drench, just a few ounces at a time. As I said, the smaller plant got none of this at all, and the larger plant that you saw at the very beginning got it about once every 5 to 6 days. So you can see that the growth was incredible. The first plant did get watered. There was nothing other missing from it, and it had very quality soil. It had the black cow mix that I've talked about before. I'll put a link right here that tells you how to make your own potting soil. And so that's what I'm saying, is there was only one difference, and this was it. And you can see there was a huge difference in growth. So let's move on to recipe 2 now that I've told you the mixture rate, in case you want to try that one and just do one at a time. Now, the second recipe, number 2, I'm going to call it an oatmeal plus rice water wash fermented fertilizer. And so we're going to take 1 cup of our oatmeal, just like we did in the first one. We're going to take 1 cup of the rice water. Now, I made a video recently. Take a look up at the top right, and it'll talk about using fermented rice water. But in this case, we're not going to use the rice. We're only using the water that has been sitting in. This has been in here, about 6 or 8 hours. So it's had plenty of time for some of the starches to get into the water. Next, we're going to use 1 tablespoon of the molasses, just like we did before, and I believe we did a teaspoon, of our active dry yeast. And of course, you want to make sure that this is still functioning properly. So you can do a test with some just ordinary sugar and water, warm water, not chlorinated, and make sure that your yeast has not gone bad. If it's an older yeast, some people will keep this in their fridge or their cabinet for years and years and years. And I suppose over a period of time, it could go bad. So you just want to test it and make sure you get that foaming reaction. Lastly, you want to use 1 quart of non-chlorinated water, just like we talked about before. So that is recipe number 2. I'll mix it up real quick, and I'll show you them side by side. Now, I just recently made a video about how to use whole rice in the garden, so take a look at that. If I haven't already linked it, I'll link it right here. But this is something that can be used in a very specific way as well. So we've got our first formula here, which is the just ordinary oatmeal fermentation tea. I'm going to put that right up front there. The second is the rice water, and when you first put it in there, make sure you mix it well. And then as it sits for about 2 days, make sure you loosen the cap to allow any of those fermentation gases to escape. Or you could just put, like I said, just a small towel or something like that over there, dish rag, whatever, and then that way you don't have an overbuild of pressure. So that's our first 2. The second one, I'm going to put right here on the screen the rice water recipe. In case I misspoke, because I did it so quickly, someone may have missed it there. So that's recipe 1, recipe 2, and we'll move on to recipe 3. Now, let me just backtrack just for a second. Before I move on to 3, I just want to say one more thing about the rice water. It has lactic acid bacteria, and that can help with harmful pathogens that might be in the soil. So just in case I forget that towards the end, I want to throw that in there before I do move on to recipe 3. Now, the next recipe, number 3, is fermented oatmeal and banana peel fertilizer, and this has a higher potassium amounts in it. So this is really good for fruiting plants, so tomatoes, cucumbers, anything that's producing flowers to ultimately produce your vegetables. So this is something you may want to try. I always recommend trying all 5 of them and experimenting and find out what works best in your garden. So the first ingredient is going to be a banana peel. You're going to take it, so the one I had for breakfast this morning, and we're going to cut it up into small 1-inch, ½ inch to 1-inch squares there. And then we're going to take 1 cup of oatmeal, as we did before. We're going to take 1 tablespoon of molasses, 1 teaspoon of our dry yeast, and remember, we want to use our rain catch water that's slightly on the warm side. So I'll mix that up again, and this will be recipe number 3. All right, so I'm just going to fast forward through this, but again, I'm starting with the banana, then the oatmeal, then the molasses, and before we do any of that, we're going to add our very pure water. Now, as I mix each one of these, I'll just give it a good 45 to a minute and a half shake. Make sure that it's well mixed. Make sure that our yeast is mixed in with the sugar so we'll have the proper reaction. And the thing to remember is in a couple of days, you're going to see a lot of foaminess, a lot of that reaction happen. You may smell a little bit of a sour smell, or probably maybe a bread baking, or possibly even a beer smell. But remember, on each one of these, we need to loosen the lid or just take the lid off completely and cover it with a dish rag and allow it to go through that process. But if you choose to do just one or all 5 of these, you can test each one. Like I said at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you which one worked best and I got the most results of. The biggest results, I should say, the fastest growth, the most root stimulation, which is why I think you see such a huge comparison between the 2 tomato plants I showed you at the very beginning. Now the next one probably contains something you may or may have not ever even thought of using in your garden, or you've been warned against using in your garden, and that's wood ash. But I'm going to tell you why you do want to use wood ash, but you're not using a huge amount. You're going to use 1 tablespoon. So let's start from the beginning. Again, 1 cup of oatmeal, 1 tablespoon of our molasses, 1 teaspoon of whatever type of yeast you have, and then 1 tablespoon of wood ash. I'll tell you something very specific about that. And of course, our quart of warm, pure water. Now, wood ash, you don't want to use, I make my own in my fire pit, but you can also, I ordered this one just to see what kind of quality it was, and it is a hardwood ash. But if you do make it at home, make sure you don't use anything like painted wood or treated wood. You want to make sure that it is nothing more than just tree limbs from hardwoods, not conifers or pines or softwoods. So hardwood limbs have the most minerals in them. So the smaller the limb, the more concentrated the minerals. The larger part of the tree, if I can get that out, may have less minerals in it. So you just want to use the very small parts that you can cut off by hand, and it's really easy to do. Now, one more final note about wood ash. Some people will say that it will alter your pH in your soil and it could damage your plants, but we're not, like I said, we're not using a large amount. But wood ash has potassium, magnesium, and calcium in it, so that can be really good for heavy feeding plants such as vegetables, cucumbers, anything like that, tomatoes, peppers. It's going to really help a lot because that is all heavy feeding plants, and that makes a huge difference in the soil. And since it's in this liquid form, it's going to be easier drawn into the root system and up to the plant, and makes a big difference very quickly. Now, one more note before I do a high-speed combination here. Put your water in first before you add your wood ash, because sometimes that can stick to the bottom of the jar. I've noticed that a lot of times, that even if you mix it, vigorously shake it, sometimes it can stick down there. So just fill up your jar to about where you would normally put your water levels in. You can always top it back off if it's not enough in there, and then go on and add everything else in your wood ash. And again, vigorously shake it for anywhere from 45 to a minute and a half. All right, so I'm just doing a very easy mix here, back and forth, to make sure that everything's mixed properly and that the yeast is going to start producing its reaction. Again, I probably can't say this enough, but you want to make sure that you just loosen those lids, because you don't want a super pressure buildup. It may be okay in these jars, but then again, it could cause a crack and you have a big mess in there. So that's number 4. This recipe number 4 is the fermented wood ash and oatmeal. So we're all having a base of oatmeal, and this one has something a little extra that most people don't think about, which is wood ash. So our next mix is a little different. We're going to use our 1 cup, it's like our final cup of oatmeal. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of yogurt. You can use Greek yogurt, plain yogurt, and the reason we're using yogurt, it introduces a very specific type of bacteria, and it's going to help a lot with the enzymes in the soil. Then we're going to go to our molasses, 1 tablespoon. We're going to do the 1 quart of water, and as always, we're doing just a booster. You might be able to get away without using yeast, but this is going to boost the fermentation process in all these recipes, so that's why I have 1 teaspoon added to each one. You may have the reaction without the yeast, but I think it's going to boost it and make it work much better. So again, I would always have this on hand. Just keep some in your fridge and it'll last for quite a long time, months or even years. Now I'm going to do an easy mix here with our yogurt, the final of the 5, and then I'm going to reveal which one caused that massive difference in growth between those 2 tomato plants started at exactly the same time from seed. I didn't apply this to the soil right away. Like I said earlier, I waited till I had the first set of true leaves, which it's not the first 2 leaves that come out, but it's the second set that come out of our true leaves. So there you have it, all 5 types, and I'm going to reveal which one actually worked the best. And I will tell you, probably not to anybody who knows anything about wood ash, it was actually the wood ash formula that caused such a difference in growth. I think it was because of the magnesium, calcium. I think that helped a lot of growth there. It helped a lot of absorption of minerals. The greenhouse managed to stay pretty warm, and we had a very early spring. I actually had to move a lot of stuff out of the greenhouse rather quickly. So as I showed each recipe as I was mixing there, and I hope it was on screen long enough, but hopefully you can freeze frame it, I would encourage you to try all 5 recipes. It's not expensive to do. You can get really inexpensive oats, the yogurt you can get from the dollar store. I'll put a link in the description if you don't have access to the molasses. This you can find at almost all grocery stores, the yeast. So in the rice, you can also find that at the local grocery store, dollar store. So everything I'm using, all 5 of these recipes, I did a 1-part recipe to 10 parts water, and I also filtered it before I put it in any type of watering can. So I'm filtering out any solids, and I just have liquids that I'm mixing with water. Again, 1-to-10 ratio. Now I know I'll get this question, so I need to answer it, is how long will any of these last? What is the lifespan of the mix? It's going to be anywhere from 5 to 7 days, and you need to use it up quickly. You'd use the frequency, I said about every 7 to 10 days, and so you should be able to get it all taken care of if you have a healthy number of plants. If you have a small number of plants, just make one, which I would recommend being the wood ash. You can order this online and have it to you in about 24, 48 hours, depending on where you live, at one of the Amazon warehouses. You might be able to find it at your local hardware store. I've yet to see any, so that's why I always recommend ordering. Some of the more difficult things to find, just order it online. You can have it at your house in no time at all. Now the experiment with these formulas, I think I had a total of 15 to 18 plants, but I specifically measured 2 plants side by side with each formula, one with not the formula on it and one with the formula. And as you can see, it made a huge difference in growth. The light was the same, the watering schedule was the same, the soil was exactly the same, the temperature in the greenhouse was the same for all. None of the plants were some other location, inside or outside. They were all on shelves right next to each other. So everything was the same, and the only difference was the formula, and you can see it made a huge difference. Now, not in hours, not in days, but in over a period of weeks, you can see the growth was quite a bit better, and this particular example was the wood ash formula. So try that one first, and I would recommend trying all 5. They're not expensive, especially if you buy your products at the dollar store. You could experiment endlessly, and like I said, I've done over 30 different experiments with many other types of recipes. This was just one, even though there was 5 recipes within the one, but it was basically the fermented oatmeal idea. So guys, keep an eye out for upcoming videos. I'm going to show you a lot of other experiments I did at the end of the season last year, in the greenhouse this year, and even out into the garden. I'm still waiting on that last frost to come that may or may not come. We're getting incredibly warm weather. This is the beginning of March, and we're hitting 80 degrees and above. So it's incredible this year what an early spring we've had. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. If you had a question about this video, any previous video, hope you'll become a public subscriber first, because I tend to push those questions to the front of the line. I get hundreds of questions a day, so it's really hard to answer all of those questions, so I try to give priority to subscribers. If you really want to help the channel grow, I have a Patreon. You can see free material there if you're a member, and you can download all sorts of PDFs and see videos, or you can order them. You can download them at a small charge if you don't want to become a member. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day.